This is part 2 of my video series on the Model B distributor. Although I said that part 2 was going to involve the springs and measuring the timing curve, I am still not ready to record that particular material. I still don't have an engine that I can put the distributor on. I thought I would by this time, but I still don't. In the meantime, we're going to do something that I bet doesn't get done very often in the Model A world. We're going to do an unboxing video. Vince Falter, who is famous in the community as the guy who runs the FordGarage.com website, which is a huge repository of really important information on both the Model A and specifically the Model B. Anyway, Vince loves to collect new old stock parts for the Model B, and he was very kind and very generous enough to send me some for inspection measurement for my research, and he needs them back as quickly as possible. So we're going a little off the cuff today, and we're just going to measure these and look at them. You'll sort of look at them as I look at them, and hopefully we can take some measurements that will help people figure out whether the parts or how close the parts that you're encountering are to spec. So what we're going to start with here, this is a Model B distributor shaft and counterweight assembly in a box. So I'll just read you what it's got here. Handle with care. Do not take this assembly apart. This assembly has been tested and adjusted to give proper spark advance. Do not bend the spring anchor brackets or change any adjustments on this shaft and governor assembly. Follow directions for installing on the other side of the carton. So the reason this is important is when Ford supplied the assemblies for the Model B distributor shaft and the weights and everything, it came as a single unit. They were not sending the counterweights and the springs and the governor separately for swapping out at the mechanic shop. You were supposed to remove the entire shaft assembly and put a new shaft assembly in. So let's take a look at, it says instructions for installing on the other side of the carton. Now these are a little hard to read, but I'll see what I can do for you here. Directions for installing. To remove the shaft and governor assembly from the distributor base, file the head off the pin that goes through the shaft and the sleeve. Okay, yeah, so that would be, so if on your B distributor, that's your pin that goes through the collar. So you're supposed to file the head off. And it says drive out the pin. So you would drive this pin off, get the collar off. Be sure to file off all burrs around the pinhole. Remove interrupter plate by turning counterclockwise. Okay, so interrupter plate is another word for the timing plate. So just assume that this was installed, and then it wants us to turn this counterclockwise, which lines these tabs up with the notches here. You then lift off. And it says, turn it counterclockwise, you'll have to unscrew this screw here, and then you'll have to disconnect the condenser and the ignition. So you take those screws off, take it off. And then I think it wants you to, take this out. They sort of skip that step, but now that you've gotten this collar off, you can just pull this whole assembly right out. And if you'll recall from my previous video, underneath this assembly, against the casting, there's a thrust washer that sits right there. So it says place thrust washer on new shaft and governor assembly, oil the shaft, very important, and insert into the distributor base, and then replace the interrupter plate. And then it says replace the shaft sleeve, that's this guy, and the rivet over the pin. I think it means pin it over. Shaft should have from 4 to 10 thousandths end play. Step 6, adjust cam to time spark after distributor is mounted on engine, etc., etc. Okay, so that's what they want you to do. Let's take a look at the box. So this is obviously a box that has had some life. It's got a price on it. Genuine Ford parts, distributor shaft and cam assembly. And this is ripped off, but it should say B-12170 was the part number. You can kind of see it there. No other markings on the box. So if you slide this out, I got to keep these like segregated. I'm keeping the new old stock stuff over here, and then my stuff is over there, because if I get them mixed up, Vince will probably have me killed. So this is what you get. So it's got the little, it's holding this in place with the cardboard. You pull this off, take this out. So this is what these assemblies would have looked like. You've got your shaft, you've got your weight plate, the brackets, the counterweights, the springs, the governor, the cam, and then the cam screw on top. And I should note, you know, even though this is quote unquote new old stock, you can see there's been some erosion here right at the top of the base, and it's a little bit pitted just from having existed for 90 years. So it's a good reminder that just because something is quote unquote new old stock or new old replacement stock doesn't necessarily mean that it's suitable to run. You still have to make sure that it, you know, still meets the requirements, the mechanical requirements. So just to start off, let's take a measurement on this shaft. Same thing here, right at 1/2 inch. So the shaft is exactly 1/2 inch. And this is important because if you look at, so I've got another one here. Here's a shaft assembly that has seen some use, right? So if I measure this one, you can really clearly see this is looks like 4 thousandths undersize. A little better at the bottom. Yeah, still 4. So yeah. So this shaft has been worn down by 4 thousandths, which means it'll always have that play in the bushings if you try to use it in this condition. So when you're looking at these shafts and you're trying to determine whether the shaft you have is usable, I mean, obviously you're going to want it to be smooth. This one has other problems. It's really rough here, but you should be measuring the diameter of the shaft, and you want that to be right at 1/2 inch. So the next thing I want to do is take a look at some of these component parts. Try to take that out super gently. Again, probably get a contract on my life if I mess any of these up. Remember that the B distributor uses exactly the same setup right here as the A distributor. You've got this screw that has the very special threads. You've got a thin lock washer on top of a thin flat washer. And then you've got this is of course the B cam, which many A people are using these days, but it is not required. A cam still perfectly good. Let's check some other points where these tend to wear a lot. So what I'm going to do is carefully remove the springs and remove governor assembly and the counterweights. And what we want to look at is these 3 posts. Right here, there's a lot of wear that can happen right here. So just looking at these posts where the counterweights connect, make sure I'm zeroed properly. Yep. So looking where the counterweights connect, this post is 0.180, looks like. And same for the other one. And then this post where the governor assembly sits, this is 0.280. And so these are points that tend to get a lot of wear because there's a lot of just not like continuous rotation, but just moving back and forth on them. So these are constantly doing this, you know, could be thousands of times a day. So here's an example of a shaft assembly that's gotten a lot of wear. And I don't know if you can see, but this post is like egg-shaped, basically because of all the wear. So just for kicks. Yeah, so this is supposed to come in at 0.18, and it is coming in at 0.16, so 20 thousandths of wear on that one. And then this is looking like it's about 0.276, but definitely a few thousandths of wear on the inside here. So if you combine the wear on this with then the wear also on the inside of the governor assembly, and then that's where you start to get a lot of slop. Another thing that we should be looking at is these posts. So remember, on the box, do not bend the spring anchor brackets. These here be the spring anchor brackets. Do not bend them. I wonder if they actually are the same angle. Can't be sure. It's not a great way to measure. They're already 9. Probably doing this wrong. Yeah, 70. Okay, yeah, they don't look quite the same. So, purportedly, these were measured at the factory and put in a distributor machine and checked to make sure that it would give the right advance. And the fact that these two are slightly different, to me, indicates that these might well have all been manually adjusted to get a particular timing curve. That's just my theory. So then the other thing that you have to be thinking about is these springs. What is the spring tension that Ford wanted it to have? So in order to figure that out, I'm going to put this back together. These counterweights, by the way, they're pretty uniform. I haven't run into a whole lot of problems with weird counterweights. These are usually good. Notice that tight fit. That's what you want. If these posts get egged out, then it'll change the way that these rotate on them, which changes your timing curve. Yeah, notice it's nice and tight. It rotates well, but wherever you put it, it stays there. And that's both because there's a little bit of dried grease on it, but also because it's a very close fit. So what we want to be looking at is what is the distance the spring is going to have to bridge. So on this one, the distance at rest for the spring looks like it's coming in at 6.72 on this one and 6.94 on this one. So again, kind of confirming these are not identical, even though this is right out of the box, but these are not identical. So 0.672 on this one, or sorry, 0.672, 0.694 on this one. And then the next thing you have to think about is, okay, what is the maximum distance they have to bridge? And notice it's not much, right? Like, look at this. It's not really moving that much. So if I extend these out as far as it's going to go, now I remeasure. It's like 0.766. And then on this side, .736. So roughly, varying between 0.736 and 0.766, kind of right in the middle there is 0.75, 3/4 of an inch. So when we're checking the spring tension, we want to look at what is it at rest, and then what is it at full extension. The spring tension at rest for these is very close to 0, which you can tell because I was able to get them on and off just with my fingers. So just pop that right over. So you're almost at 0 tension here. There's like basically nothing going on. It's very easy to move. So to check it at 0.75 or full extension, got a little trick here. This is an N2000 spring tension gauge. Picked this up on eBay. It is not as nice as spring tension gauges that I've seen other guys have, but I think it's good enough for the kind of ballpark estimates that we're trying to get. So to measure this, we take one end, one loop, put it over here. This is going to be the bracket, and this is going to be the post on the governor assembly. And I'm just going to pull on this until I'm right at the 3/4 inch mark, trying to keep that perpendicular. And measure the tension. Now I know this is not super accurate, but it's close enough. So what I'm getting here is roughly 1 pound, 12 ounces. So 1 3/4 pounds of spring tension at 0.75 inches. And then this one, and keep in mind, right, these are new old stock, never used. So for this one, yep, there you go. Coming right in at 1 pound, 12 at 3/4 of an inch. So at 3/4 of an inch, 1 pound, 12 ounces on each spring. So let's put this back together. We'll see what else we can learn. So we return the assembly to its box to sleep for another 90 years. Another thing that Vince sent was these unused interrupter plates, or points plates. And again, you can see just because they're unused doesn't mean that they're suitable for use. You would still need to clean these up if you wanted to use them. But what I want to specifically look at here, so just for comparison, here is one that Dave Renner restored. So just looking at these side by side, very similar looking. I think nothing specific to comment on, but I do want to look at this post. So when I put this unit together in part 1, I noted that I had to take this post down a little bit, sand it down a little bit. So I'm curious what these measure at. All right, so this one's coming in at 0.189, 188, 0.189 again. Okay. This one, 0.188, 0.188-ish. Okay, so 0.188 is about where those ought to be. If you are restoring one of these, you want to check that, make sure it's good, because it needs to be a good fit for the points, but not, of course, not too good. Just a couple remaining new old stock parts here that I've been lucky enough to take a look at. So this is a set of points. These are original Ford Model B points, B-12199. So one thing that you'll notice here, if you watched part 1, this doesn't come with the spring, so that's very common in the older point sets. the intent was that you would reuse the spring that you already had. So this is the set that I've got on the B distributor that I'm building. I think this was probably aftermarket. In fact, I'm sure it's aftermarket. So just taking a look at the differences between these, this one was kind of the best. This one on my right hand was the best of the ones that I had access to. So if you just look at them side by side, you can see that the phenolic material is a little bit different in the Ford one. The copper material is a little bit different. The depth, just eyeballing it, the depth of the rubbing block seems to be about the same. Who knows what the life would be. Turning them over, the style of the rivets, a little bit different. But otherwise they're pretty, this material is a little bit different. Otherwise, pretty similar, not a lot new here. I do want to see. So this was the post that I sized. So let's see if this goes on. Yep, goes on pretty well. And last but definitely not least, condensers. Model B condensers, my favorite consumable maybe. Certainly I've done more than one video involving condensers. And I was excited to get these because my experience with the aftermarket B condensers, which are the only kind I've been able to get, have been not great. So kind of bringing these condensers in. You're not a B condenser. Let's check out the ones I've got first. So these are my aftermarket condensers. These are Vince's new old stock condensers. So I've got my clamp meter measuring nanofarads. So let's take a look here. First we're gonna ground it, make sure there's no residual charge. And I made a note last time, this one was 0.20 microfarads, so let's take a look. You don't want to touch it while you're measuring because it'll measure the capacitance of your skin. All right. Yep, so that one is measuring right in at 0.20 microfarads still, so that's good. And then the one I've got here, I think I can just do it this way. 0.225. Yep. So those are the ones that I've got in. And let's check Vince's. So note that these are official Ford condensers. This one, I don't know if you can read it. Got B-12300 printed here. It's got this little, I don't know the name for this, machined in here. That's very distinctive for these. Really nice looking condenser. And it does have the Ford logo on it as well. Again, hard to see. This one's a little different. I wasn't able to, oh yeah, it's, okay, it's there. It's just real faint. Ford B12300. And then it also has B12300 written here. So let's check these guys real quick. These are legit 90-year-old condensers. By all rights, they should have failed decades ago. .29. Okay. Okay, now let's check this other one. .27 microfarads. So these are coming in just a bit. If you recall, for the Model A, the spec was 0.20 to 0.25. That's the spec that my aftermarket ones that I've got are in. These are 0.27 and 0.29. To my knowledge, we still haven't turned up much in terms of official documentation for what the spec for these is. But I think this is these are definitely close enough that they could be run, which is, in my experience, unheard of for condensers that are actually this old. Now, of course, these are, just because these are new old stock by Ford doesn't mean that they actually date from 1932, right? They could be replacement stock from perhaps a decade or so later. Regardless, these are certainly the oldest B condensers that I've encountered that still work. And I think the fact that they are OEM condensers is not a coincidence. Ford obviously had very high standards, and you can see that in the numbers here. So, thanks again to Vince Falter for lending me these basically artifacts, which are going to go back in his collection and be safe there. So I will continue working on getting an engine ready to run the B distributor in. I've got a lot of research that I've already completed on springs, a lot of exciting stuff, but I'm going to wait and cover that when I have an engine ready so that we can get final results. Right now, I've still just got tantalizing intermediate results that you guys are not going to be satisfied with. So bear with me, and as soon as I've got something, I will post. Thank you.